and welcome to Timeless with Julie Hartman Live. It is Tuesday, May 21st, 2024, and it is great, as always, to be with you. 844-861-5537 is the call-in number, 844-861-5537. I am looking right at the camera. I didn't even need to look down to read that because I have committed it to memory. I've gotten some really great calls on this show. So if you'd like to call in today, love to chat with you. As always, you can use the live chat, which I have a direct view to right now, as long as you keep it classy. Hello, Sean McConnell. Great to be with you, my friend.
Hi, Julie.
You know, I have done this on the show in previous episodes, but I need to bring this back. Shouting out this book. Just really quickly, this book is called Elevator Pitches for God. And it's a book that's comprised of 70 authors, of which yours truly is one. And we each write one page or 500-word essays for why we believe in God, or why maybe some people don't believe in God, but nevertheless think that God is necessary. It's both a religious and not super religious book in the sense that it is really diverse. You have Jews, Muslims, Christians, atheists, agnostics, who are contributors to the book. You have someone like Seth Dillon, who's the CEO of the Babylon Bee. You have a writer from the TV show Friends in the book. It really is an amazingly diverse read. And it's just people giving their one-page pitch for what they think about a higher power. I said that I'm in the book. I don't get a dime from the book. Wish I did, but it's a different story. None of us do. It's an independent project, and we all just contributed because it's so cool. So I'm not shouting this out because I get some kind of revenue from it. I just think it is that good and life-changing. Really, really cool book. It's called Elevator Pitches for God. Yes, my dear Sean.
I could have saved you 496 words.
Really? And
yeah,
what would be your 4-word pitch?
God is
a potato. I knew you were going to say that. He said that on a recent episode of Timeless. Please elaborate.
No. If you don't get it, you don't get it, man. The idea is that a potato is God, and it doesn't matter how you prepare or consume that potato, be it via chip or fry or au gratin or baked. You must consume the potato. So there are many flavors and paths to the potato, but you must consume the potato.
You know, this would be a great Dennis and Julie episode, just having Sean give that analogy and then watch Dennis and I just try to tear it apart. I think there are some more noble paths to God than others.
Well, you know, like the fries battle with the au gratin and the chips fight with the baked, and it doesn't get you anywhere because you're all potato.
Thank you,
See
Sean.
what I'm saying? I'm aiming for world peace here, Jules.
Well, maybe in a second iteration of the book, you can give your contribution. By the way, is this mic situation okay? It's a little close to me. Is it good? Thumbs up, thumbs down? You want me to move it a little, or we're chilling, cooking with gas?
We're fine.
We're good. Okay, cool.
You don't touch it.
Okay. Well,
no touching.
Oops, too late.
No touching.
All right, quickly, before we get to our big topic, I do want to just shout out that you can watch Dennis and Julie. That's my show with Dennis Prager. Very unique name. Every Sunday on this channel at 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock Eastern. And then Timeless with Julie Hartman Live is at that same time, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. And we take shorter clips of this show. Of course, we're going to highlight the potato comment and its great profundity, but we take shorter clips of the show and we post them as Julie noted news clips, the more noteworthy parts. All right, so that's that. Now let's move on to the topic for today. And we're only doing one. Sometimes on this show we do like 8. We're only doing one today. But boy, it is an important one. And it's about Chinese Communist Party propaganda. I was in the elevator coming up to the studio today, and I struck up a conversation with someone. He goes, "Oh, what do you do?" "Oh, I do a talk show." "Oh, you do a talk show? Wow, what's the talk show about?" And I said, "Well, when Jerry Seinfeld pitched Seinfeld to NBC, he said to them, it's a talk show, or it's a show about nothing." And I said to this person in the elevator, "My show is a show about everything." And they said, "Oh, really? Well, what is today on?" And I said, "Comparing Chinese Communist Party propaganda from the 1960s to today." And they very quickly got off the elevator. They probably thought that I was a little kooky. But seriously, this is such an important topic, you guys, because China, I believe, is one of our greatest threats. Its massive influence, infiltration, and subversion campaign all around the world, and especially here in the United States. And so recently, I was reading the Epoch Times, which is, by the way, my favorite newspaper ever. Speaking of not getting paid to give a shout out, Epoch Times has no idea I'm doing this. I don't get any kind of payment from them for shouting them out. I just love them so much that I do it all the time. They have a fantastic paper, objective, very clear news. They have a fantastic life and tradition and mind and body section. Everyone should check it out. But the origin of today's discussion comes from an Epoch Times article, which recently exposed how the Chinese Communist Party is both planting propaganda here in the United States, specifically about the Israel-Palestine conflict, to confuse and enrage and make the American population and make matters worse here. And at the same time as they're doing that here in the United States, the CCP is also spreading its own propaganda about these protests and what's going on in America in their own country. So it's a twofold thing, and we'll be discussing both today. And I give total credit to the Epoch Times for much of this information, because unlike Claudine Gay, I do cite my sources. I'm waiting for the ding. You got to cite your sources. It's very important. I'll link the article in the description box. But this is really important. There's a twofold thing going on here. Again, China confusing the minds of those in the United States with regard to the Israel-Palestine conflict, and then using the discord here to spread their own propaganda in their own country to turn general sentiment against the United States. So let's dive in and look at this, and I'll be showing too how this strategy is very, very similar to what the Chinese Communist Party was doing in the 50s and 60s with the propaganda about the United States then. But first, I sort of want to give an overview of why we should care about this. I mean, sort of amazing we even have to talk about why we should care about this. We as Americans should be highly concerned if a foreign agent, especially one as powerful as China, is spreading discord in our country, but we're all very jaded, sadly, and don't seem to care. But it doesn't appear that Americans generally truly understand the threat that China poses to us. If we go back like 60 to 70 years ago, here is the incredible thing about China, or as our dear former president would say, China. They were purposefully economically crippling themselves in the second part of the 20th century to enact a permanent socialist revolution. People in the countryside would use these shanty pieces of equipment to do their industrial or agrarian work because under Mao Zedong, they were demanded to use shanty equipment because Mao Zedong thought that's how we keep the socialist revolution going. From then to now, which has only been about 60 to 70 years, China has so transformed itself. In many ways, it is still suffering economically, and we could talk about that. It has a big property problem, for instance. But China has gone from this very primitive socialist economy to now the second largest economy in the world. Second only to us, the United States, at least for now. Yes, they have, as I said, their economic problems, but they also are churning out great levels of production. I mean, obviously they sell a lot of clothing to us. Right now, they are flooding the market with steel. So they are a formidable economic sort of adversary to us. Sean's cutting in, yes.
Well, don't they have an issue with population and future workforce?
They do. They absolutely do. They during the 70s, Deng Xiaoping, the president of China after Mao Zedong, enacted the one-child policy because they thought their population was growing at too high of a rate. And to your point, Sean, it's led to this massive demographic issue where now they, in a total about-face, have not only reversed the one-child policy, but they are actually state subsidizing IVF, and they're subsidizing other forms of baby making, shall we say, and discouraging birth control because they need their population to grow. India just overtook China recently as the most populous nation in the world with 1.5 billion people. And it's true, China is experiencing this big demographic collapse. So yes, they're a threat to us, but they also, of course, do have their struggles. Yes.
I was watching a show, and they know the baby that was born in India that overtook the population in China.
Really?
They have whittled down to an individual baby.
That's fascinating. Wait, so when you say they know, you mean like China knows? Or
no, the Indian people, they celebrate this baby that was born that put them over the top.
That is so interesting.
I don't remember the name of the baby, but I thought it was fascinating.
That baby will be a legend in India for his or her whole life, because India and China have this huge rivalry. Again, we don't think this way in the United States. We don't have really any national pride anymore, sadly, but countries really view the number of people they have, their population, as a huge source of pride. And so that doesn't surprise me, because India and China have been competing over this for some time, and India has taken China over. But despite these difficulties with China, and it is important to acknowledge that they are legitimate. They do definitely have an economic problem. To your point, Shanzi, they definitely have a demographic problem. But despite those challenges, they really are on the march. I talk a lot about the Belt and Road Initiative, which is their global initiative to really, if we're just speaking bluntly, buy off almost every nation on earth. They go into these countries and they present themselves as helpers. They go, oh, for instance, in Iran, you need your railway line in Tehran rebuilt. Hire a Chinese company to do it. We'll do it for you. You need the Ayatollah Khomeini International Airport to have a facelift and a revamp. We'll do it for you. Hey, they're everywhere, these people. Everywhere. They're in Latin America. They went into Colombia and they said, oh, you guys need COVID vaccines? Here. The Chinese COVID vaccine, again, in a great display of irony, because China unleashed COVID, they brought these COVID vaccines to Latin America. They also built a railway line in Bogota, the capital of Colombia. This is I could give so many more examples. They're building a university in Hungary. They've bought terminals at ports at various countries all around the world. They went into Saudi Arabia and they brought the Huawei telecommunications line. They have done something so shrewd. It really is amazing. They're an evil regime, but you have to give them credit for the strategy. Instead of getting control of a country through invasion, which is what the United States, what we did with Iraq and Afghanistan, what the Soviet Union did with also Afghanistan in the 70s, instead of getting control of a country through violent means, at least right now, China's doing the opposite. They're going into this country saying, we're going to help you, But then part and parcel of that help is that they have control. They buy these countries off because, as my dear mother says, nothing in life is for free. If someone's offering you something for free, they're not. There are strings attached.
I don't think that's original to your mother. All due respect.
Oh, let's give her credit. Come on. It's probably not original to her, but it's such a great line because it really is true. And so this Belt and Road Initiative, it was launched 10 years ago. Get a load of this. A few months ago, I think in October of 2023, they had a celebration, the BRI 10-year celebration. They had there were representatives from 140 countries at this Belt and Road Initiative celebration in Beijing. How many countries are there, Sean? Can you look it up? 192? I mean, that's about 70% of the world's leaders or representatives came to China, and there was fireworks and this big display, this big celebration to celebrate the Belt and Road Initiative, basically to celebrate China buying them off. How many countries?
195.
Oh, 195. Yeah, okay, close enough. So they're doing this massive campaign all around the world. And to give more examples, just a few, and literally it is just a few. I could give dozens and dozens of examples. China has spearheaded the BRICS economic conglomeration. BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South America. Iran is a BRICS nation. Saudi Arabia, they just brought in more of these countries. And BRICS is this economic alliance comprised of countries which in total amount to about a third of the world GDP. And they are trying to knock the dollar off as the global reserve currency and establish an alternative global reserve currency, which would not be good for the United States. We benefit hugely from having the dollar as the global reserve currency, but we're so out to lunch with this stuff that we're like just letting this happen, and we're like, oh, whatever. Let's trans the kids. Yeah, we got to be paying attention because our adversaries are, trying to knock us off as the global hegemon, and we benefit from being the global hegemon. So we better wake up. China also created this thing called the Global Security Initiative, which is a political alliance which seeks to, quote, apply Chinese solutions and wisdom to world politics, and to, quote, combat Western unilateralism, bloc confrontation, and hegemonism. And we've seen that Xi Jinping has met with all these leaders all around the world. He's very tight with Vladimir Putin. He was very tight with Ibrahim Raisi until, Ibrahim Raisi decided to get in the helicopter. That's the former president of Iran. But you get the point that China is wanting, and is very overt. You just heard what I said. They're wanting to, I'm sorry to put it this bluntly, they want to control the world. They want to be the top dog. They're doing all of these races in space. They are trying to create a jointly manned moon base with Russia by the year 2035. And they have been spectacularly successful at a subversion and infiltration campaign here in the United States. They established a spy base off of Cuba in 2019 to spy on our military base there. They buy farmland all around the country, conveniently situated next to our military bases to spy on us. TikTok, its parent company ByteDance, is a CCP-backed enterprise, and they seize the data of Americans through that. They just hacked the UK Ministry of Defense and seized the data of the top government leaders in the Defense Department of the United Kingdom. On the cover of the Wall Street Journal yesterday, there was this big story about how the U.S. government is warning that China may be committing espionage through these underseas cables that we have here in the United States. Chinese companies will come and try to repair these cables and then seize data about the way that our infrastructure works. As I'm speaking, I know this all sounds very fear-mongering and doomsday, but it's the truth. It is the truth. they are really, really on the march here. So that is why it is important to look at the propaganda that they're spreading here and they're spreading in their own country. Again, even if they weren't so powerful of a country, we should care as Americans if a foreign agent is trying to throw us off, but we really don't. So I'm reading here from the Epoch Times. This is, again, the article about this very thing, how China is seizing on the Israel-Palestine divisions to inculcate confusion and discord in the United States population. Psychological warfare. Because how do you subvert the enemy? Yeah, you could invade them, you could do all various things, but there is no better way to undermine your enemy than to make the population stupid, confused, disunified, ignorant, and thinking that they're a dog, as we see here in the United States with people who think that they're furries. Okay, so the Epoch Times. They're saying China is exacting information and psychological warfare in the United States, quote, by using the pro-Palestinian campus protests to discredit the U.S. government and amplify social divisions. Continuing from the Epoch Times, quote, researchers, this is amazing, have traced campaigns related to the Israel-Hamas war to a multi-year online influence operation known as Spamoflague or Dragon Bridge, which Meta found had links to Chinese law enforcement. So our U.S. government is on this. They call it Spamoflague, but there has been this proven campaign coming from Chinese law enforcement to plant these TikTok, Instagram, Twitter videos, really amplifying the Israel-Palestine conflict and specific elements of that too, and indeed spreading overt misinformation about it and targeting American audiences to make, especially young American audiences, to make those people confused. So this is data from before October 7th, but it shows you how China has been doing this for some time. This is from August 29th, 2023. I looked on the Meta website. I looked at their yearly report. And according to their Chief Information Security Officer, Guy Rosen, quote, 2 of the largest known covert influence operations in the world on Meta come from China and Russia, targeting 50 plus apps and countries, including the United States. Okay, we know this, but still, it's just, I really want to back up with data here that this is very established that this is what they're doing. Meta in August of 2023 removed 7,000 accounts that were associated with either Russia or China pertaining to this misinformation flooding. And then this stat is again from the Epoch Times article. Very careful to cite my sources. It's immensely important.
Ding! Julie Hartman. Not gay. According
to Clemson University's Media Forensics Hub. By the way, what a cool thing. Imagine if I went to Clemson, I would spend a lot of time in that Media Forensics Hub. That's very cool. According to their research, they, quote, identified Spamoflague linked posts on Twitter calling on people to, quote, flood the encampments in universities in New York City. So China appears to be the main agent behind this Spamoflague. And then Clemson finds that they've traced them to these Twitter posts calling on people to flood the encampments. We've got to really understand this situation that we're in, and it's a double whammy because we have an immense amount of anti-Americanism and brainwash already brewing at home. It's a homegrown thing. But then there is this supplement of foreign agents also planting it and taking advantage of it. And just to pause for a moment, I wish I could go up to one of the, and I could, but I wish I could get through to them. I wish I could get through to some of these blue-haired, Birkenstock-wearing, non-binary identifying, flag-burning, keffiyeh-wearing, Death to America chanting encampment people and say to them, congratulations, sweetheart. You are our adversary's dream come true. You, my friend, are being played like a fiddle. You don't even realize it. You think you are so defiant. You think you are so independent and standing on your own, combating the patriarchy and the genocide in the horrible country that is America. You think you're this like independent person. You are the product of a massive amount of brainwash and subversion that is being peddled, again, partially here at home, but from our greatest adversaries abroad, who would execute you in 2 seconds if you brought any of your stuff over there. You are being played like a fiddle. That's the amazing, it really is just like such a funny phenomenon that they think they are the epitome of independence. And they are walking examples of these agents' success in undermining the United States. And also what I said there too, sort of in passing, is warranting another examination. China tries to spread all of this discord here in the United States, and not just with regard to the Israel-Palestine conflict. I've covered this on the show before. A lot of the gender stuff that we're seeing on TikTok is coming from the Chinese Communist Party, because they know it's a great tool to weaken and confuse young American minds. They never allow what they spread here over there. There are no transgender individuals in China. There are no gay people. I mean, maybe there are, but you know what I mean. They don't allow these individuals to exist. There are no gay people allowed in China. These things are not allowed there. And that's a terrible thing. If you are transgender, if you are gay, you should live in a free society where people respect your, identity. I'm not saying that's a good thing that China doesn't allow that, but we need to realize that they are pushing stuff here that they don't allow there. And they're using this as an opportunity, again, to confuse. Yes, there are some people who are truly trans. Of course, there are people who are truly gay. But they're trying to push this ideology onto Americans because they know that a lot of young Americans are very impressionable, and it's fertile ground for them to step in and create confusion and weaken us.
I think you're making a fantastic point, and I would love to see you go up to these people on campus if we could ensure your safety.
I know.
But I cannot allow this anti-Birkenstock bigotry to continue.
I love Birkenstocks.
They are an expensive, fine shoe, and they shall not be tainted by the blued hair tent people. Okay?
I know.
No more anti-Birkenstock language.
No, I feel bad. Look, listen,
lady.
This is a total sidebar, but when I say that, I love Birkenstocks, and I know people who have blue hair. I know sometimes I'll say like the nose. Not all of those traits I'm saying are bad traits. I'm trying to paint a picture, okay? And you know the picture. Come on.
And you did. You painted a beautiful picture. I thought
I don't know
I'd
if it's
stand
a
up
beautiful
for the
picture,
Birkenstock.
but it's a picture. By the way, for those of you who are Dennis and Julie fans, Dennis Prager wears Birkenstocks, you guys. I've seen it
socks.
with socks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there are any public photos of it, but those of us who are in his life, sort of behind the scenes, know this. Okay, so we know this is what they're doing. So when we see a video like this, I think understanding the Spamoflague campaign, it makes us look at stuff like this with a different set of eyes.
Hey, remember the 7th of October! Never forget the 7th of October! That will happen! Never forget the 7th of October! Not one more time! Not 1,000 more times! Not 10,000 times! 7th of October is about to be every day. Every day. Get it in me, mechanic! Get it in me, mechanic! Get the shahid mechanic! Get it in me, mechanic! You'll never die! There is only one solution! Intifada revolution!
Yeah, I look, you guys have seen all these. You get the point, but I watch those things knowing the extent of the Spamoflague campaign, and it's hard because you don't want to fully blame all of this on foreign agents, because we need to take responsibility here in America for what our education system has created. You know, that's our fault too. But come on, you look at that and you know that foreign actors are taking huge advantage of this. So that's the first component that I wanted to talk about, what they're doing to confuse us here. But here's the really fascinating second component that most people don't know, because obviously we're not living in China. They are taking advantage of the discord here that they are in part inculcating, or at the very least contributing to. And they are spreading these narratives about America in their own country to turn the population even more against America. And so, credit to the Epoch Times, they linked one article, a news article from Xinhua Net. This is a news agency in China, reporting, in blinking quotation marks, on what's going on in the United States. But the whole article, and we'll just read some components of it, not the whole thing, but the most salient parts, is them creating these narratives about the Israel-Palestine protests to say, like, America is this terrible place. It's super, super interesting. But before we get to that, I want to quickly tell you about something a little lighter, which is MyPillow. I use a lot of MyPillow products. As many of you know, I sleep on a MyPillow. I sleep on the Giza Dream bed sheets. I use my towels, and I wear my slippers, and my slippers are my favorite product. And you can get a lot of these products at a massive discount right now. They're having a $25 extravaganza, which is just what it sounds like. You can get 2-pack multi-use MyPillows for just $25. MyPillow sandals for $25, 6-pack towel sets for $25, brand new 4-pack dish towels for, you guessed it, just $25. And the first time ever, the premium MyPillows with all new Giza fabric are just $25. Orders over $75 will receive free shipping. Just go to mypillow.com and use the promo code Hartman, or call 1-800-566-6745 today and use the promo code Hartman. So, in this Epoch Times article, again, they cite this Xinhua News article as evidence of the propaganda in China. And a Louisiana State University research professor, H. Colleen Sinclair, observed that what China tries to do is make the United States look hypocritical. This is the key thing to understand about Chinese Communist Party propaganda in China, in that country. Because think about it. People know that the United States is a far better, more freer, more tolerant society than communist China, to put it mildly. So what the Chinese Communist Party has to do is make the United States look not so great and look not so much like a beacon of liberty and hope and tolerance and freedom, to basically, keep their population away from seeing the great shining alternative of what a free society looks like. They have to knock us down. And so let's look at how they do it. Xinhua News, let's pull up that title again. And by the way, someone is writing in the chat, I really appreciate this observation. China applies Sun Tzu's Art of War and Bezmenov's tips. It's absolutely true. Sun Tzu, who was this, thousands and thousands of years ago, this military general, he's lionized in China. Article 1 of Sun Tzu's Art of War is subdue the enemy without fighting them. That's what they're doing. And then you're right, Yuri Bezmenov. Yuri Bezmenov was a member of the KGB in the Soviet Union, and he defected to Canada, and he exposed, and I've done a whole episode on this, the methods of ideological subversion that the Soviet Union was undertaking in order to undermine the United States. And I literally showed this chart on this show. And they have these tactics: disunify. Ignorance is one of them. Inculcate ignorance in the population. I have it right here. They endeavored to have Americans have a, quote, uninformed myopia. Hatred. Demoralization. So the psychological operations are very deep. Let's look at an example of Chinese propaganda in China. This is the title again of Xinhua News article about the Israel-Palestine protests. Let's go back one to picture one, the headline. U.S. police brutality against student protesters exposes hypocrisy on free speech. So this is what Chinese citizens are reading about the United States. That there is allegedly police brutality against the encampment people on these college campuses. And you see in the headline what we just talked about, what they're trying to do. They're trying to say the United States is hypocritical. The United States, this idea of them as a beacon of freedom is a sham. And this is evidence that they're not the country that they say they are. They're not the great alternative to the Chinese Communist Party that they claim to be. It's unbelievable. Okay, let's go to picture 2, the subline. As the world watches in horror at the footage of U.S. police viciously suppressing student protests, it becomes painfully evident that America's espousal of free speech is a sham. Okay, first of all, the world is not watching in horror at what's going on here in the United States. The world is not, just talk about what the world's watching in horror about. The world is a pretty atrophied place, and people have their own ideas of horror. Here in the United States, we think a microaggression is horrific. But if the world would be watching in horror at any country, China, it would be you. It would be what you do to Uyghur Muslims, putting them in concentration camps, killing people, having modern-day slaves, denying your people basic human rights. They can't even speak out against your government without any kind of retribution. They'd be looking in horror at you with your organ harvesting. China takes people and throws them in jail and then decides to harvest their organs and then sells them on the black market in order to make a profit. And they have the audacity to say in their propaganda pieces to their people that the world is watching in horror at the United States. Cheap talk coming from you. So, apparently the world's watching in horror from, at the encampments, right? Oh my God, so horrible. And then, okay, America's espousal of free speech is a sham. Okay. See how tough I'm getting for my country. I don't like it when people come from my country.
Yeah, no, Julie Hartman throwing down. It goes back to your point about the blue-haired, sandal-wearing, tent-dwelling, mask screamers. They are tearing down the United States from within. That China, you would say to these people, you're exactly what China wants you to be, and these people are doing it. But it's important to remember that is a very small minority in this country. It is over-amplified by the left media and the right media for their talking points, and it is a small minority, and we are a giant, great country that can withstand this nonsense. I have to say it. You're right.
I appreciate your saying it, but look, also this small minority has seized a lot of power, and we've got to be aware of the threat. Okay, so let's continue. Again, I'm not going to read the whole article, but just the most salient parts. Okay, ready? Oh, this is just unbelievable. Harassment, doxing, death threats, stereotyping, unequal treatment, and then there was tear gas, water cannons, and rubber bullets, all fired at student protesters across the United States. They're making this sound like, and they put police brutality in the headline, like police are coming into these encampments. I mean, that description is like a war zone. By the way, if there's some videos or instances of police being really rough and horribly, like objectively, terribly violent to students, I will be the first one to condemn that. But come on. These police are coming in and they're arresting students. That's what we have been seeing. Again, there may be fringe examples that people could bring up and again, I'll be the first one to condemn that. But when we're seeing police go into these encampments, they're not harassing, doxing, death threats, stereotyping, tear gas, water cannons, rubber. I mean, like, it's, again, the narrative that they're trying to paint is that there's this police state, and later in the article they use, I think, that exact term or one very similar to it, of coming in and just taking these poor students and ripping them away to jail. No, that's what you people do. Chinese Communist Party. And I'm not talking about the people of China. I'm talking about the Chinese Communist Party. That's what you do. Okay? And they're trying to say we do it. Then they go on in this article, footage showing police beating protesters, dragging students to the ground and carrying them off in handcuffs, flooded social media, and a fray going on, merely demanding ceasefire. An affray going from merely demanding ceasefire and divestment to lodging legal maneuvering and civil rights claims. So, again, they're saying, the police are doing these horrible things to these students who are merely demanding ceasefire. These students are not merely demanding ceasefire. And again, it's hard to talk about all of them with one brush. Of course, there are some who are merely demanding ceasefire, but they're not reporting on the fact that, for instance, at Columbia, these students violently assaulted Jewish students. They broke into Hamilton Hall. We played the video, smashing glass, hoisting in. That's destruction of property. That's trespassing. But of course, they're trying to make it out to be like, oh my God, these like peaceful protest students are just sitting there demanding ceasefire, and the police are arresting them. They were arresting them because they violently entered Hamilton Hall and broke the law. Let's go on to picture 3. This line is amazing. Okay, ready? Peaceful student demonstrators were framed by armed police and U.S. media as perpetrators deserving crackdown. Do you think U.S. media is portraying them as perpetrators deserving crackdown? If anything, I think U.S. media has been pretty kind to them, Yes, of course, there have been some people in the media who have been saying that. But, our media generally has been hailing many of these individuals as heroes. I mean, even look at, this is of course not the media, but look at what Harvard University did with negotiating with the people in the encampment. Did you see that, Sean? That a few days ago they had this kind of exchange where the students agreed to clear out, and then they're going to get a meeting with the Harvard Corporation about divesting from Israel. I mean, again, Harvard is not the media, but that's hardly an example of treating those individuals as perpetrators deserving crackdown. But you see what they're trying to do. Oh, this one is great. This line is just the everything you need to see. Let's put up picture 3 again. So this propaganda article writes, capital elites were fast enough to define what is going on in Palestine. Oh, sorry. I'm reading a lot here. Capital elites were fast enough to say that this protest, I'm sort of skipping, was anti-Semitic and suggesting external tinges as behind the protest without producing a single shred of evidence. I think we just talked about the evidence with Spamoflague and the plan, but look at what they're doing. saying not a single shred of evidence that there are these external components of it. All right, we'll continue. This is picture 3.5. At the end, again, I could read every sentence of this article and pull it out for your consumption, but just the highlights. At the end of one of the paragraphs, it says, quote, "Nearly 4 years after the Floyd tragedy, real change in policing remains elusive, despite outcries triggered by one nation protest over the other." So they're trying to paint this whole thing in China of what happened during and after George Floyd, that there were no changes, that police brutality was rampant, that there were these huge changes that were needed, but no changes happened. And then now what they're essentially trying to paint is that these encampment individuals are just another example of the ever, continuing police brutality state here in the United States of America. Obviously, we know that's not true. Obviously, we know that police brutality is not rampant in the United States. When there are horrible examples of it, again, I will be the first one to condemn it. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Of course, sometimes it's happened and it happens, and it is despicable when it does. But that does not mean it is rampant. And they are trying to allege that there's been no changes in policing. I mean, look at the past 4 years with all the changes we've seen. With the police being defunded, with cash bail laws being changed, with people who have 11 priors being able to go out and commit more crimes, as we see with most perpetrators on the New York City subway, among other examples. We know that's not the reality, but this is the reality that the Chinese Communist Party is trying to paint, because they want to bring it all to this conclusion. Picture 4. The last paragraph. As the world watches in horror at the footage of U.S. police viciously suppressing student protests, it becomes painfully evident that America's espousal of free speech is a sham. This appalling display, this is what I was referring to, of state-sponsored violence lays bare the hypocrisy of a nation that prides itself on democracy while trampling on the very principles it claims to uphold. Wish I could cut to Sean, who's shaking his head and rolling his eyes. That's what they're trying to do. And what's fascinating, too, as a final point on this? This Chinese Communist Party propaganda about the United States that is being spread to the readers of this article is not very much different than what Americans say about America and what some news agencies in America write about America. And that's pretty damn bad news when you are repeating what our biggest adversary is saying about us. That should be enough. If your words are matching up with what our biggest adversary is saying, that wishes us nothing but demise, generally, I would, maybe that's too strong. Though I don't know if it is too strong. If your words are matching up with what one of our biggest adversaries says about us, that's not good. That's an indication that what you may be saying may be flawed, to put it mildly. And as a total just asterisk to this whole episode, I want to make something really, really clear. When I'm looking at the camera, I'm going, that's what you people do. That's what you do. I am not referring, of course, to China. I make a huge distinction between the people of the country and the corrupt leadership. I am referring to the terrible, corrupt leadership that is the Chinese Communist Party. And that's very different than referring to China generally, because the citizenry, the people of China, are victims of this regime. They are the victims of this terrible propaganda. So I just want to make that abundantly, I think you know this, but I just want to make it abundantly clear. One final example of the propaganda, just to show you that they're just trying to make the United States look very hypocritical. This is a tweet from Ha Chunying, the foreign ministry spokesperson of China. And they show videos of the college protests of people getting arrested and saying, remember how U.S. officials reacted when these protests happened elsewhere? Essentially saying, again, this is not what they're overtly saying, this is what I'm reading them to say. When Tiananmen Square, the pro-democracy protests happened in, 1989 in China, the United States condemned China for cracking down on those protesters. And now this thing is the same, and the United States is doing the same thing. And that's not the full story. And again, if there are examples, and there probably are, of police being rough and, that is not okay. And that is hypocritical. But that doesn't mean that America writ large is hypocritical, and fundamentally our, commitments to free speech and democracies are shams, which is what they're trying to say is happening. Do you think that's fair, Sean? A fair analysis?
Yeah, more than fair. The irony that being woke means you swallow that pill that America is systemically racist. It's quite the opposite. Like, these woke people need to wake up. That we had it right for so long, and now it's flipped. And you're somehow bad if you believe that the country is good and that you espouse what you just said, that writ large, this is not an issue. But you have to understand, some of these people don't have any value other than their victimhood. And so they must continue that march. There's examples everywhere. We saw Pelosi over at Oxford Union get sliced and diced by a student while she was trying to say that populism is bad. There's a reason Trump support continues to grow, because people are tired of this ish. They don't want it anymore. And I think these protests and all this narrative is going to backfire. I really do.
Hope so.
I hope so. I hope so. I hope that the silent majority, even saying that, has echoes of racism from Nixon for some reason. It's like everything gets flipped, and we have to hate everything about America from the past and negate all the good that has been created by this country in this world by the founding documents and the founding fathers, who are racist slave owners that we could, I could go on for days.
Yes.
And I shouldn't.
No. This is good. Because here's the thing. We, the United States, have not always lived up to our principles. Of course we haven't. But in large part, mostly, we have. And at least we've given those principles a shot, where Chinese, the communist China never gave those principles a shot. And so, yes, if there is, and of course there have been, it's very rare, but there have been, if there are examples of police brutality, or, when there has been racism in the United States, of course that's an example of hypocrisy. And of course that is something we should all be ashamed of and condemn. But we also have to be aware that there is a narrative that is being, peddled about us, that this is all of who we are. And this is what they're telling their people, and then this is what we've adopted about ourselves. And we need to be noble and clear-minded enough to really get it right, which is to say that when we have not lived up to our principles, and today if we continue in some ways to not live up to our principles, that is not who we are. But we have, damn it. Overall, we have. And we are not going to, at least in my power, I'm not going to let them screw up, plant a different narrative about us that is not true. All right. In our last 5 to 10 minutes, you see how impassioned I'm getting. I love my country so much. I hate seeing this precious country of mine. And I am so lucky. I mean, we talk all about white privilege, heteronormative privilege. The greatest privilege in the world is being an American. Full stop, end of story. And it is, I will defend this country until the day I die. I just love this country so much. Can you tell? All right, let's look in our final 5 to 10 minutes what I was telling that person in the elevator about how this compares to other propaganda in the past. This has been a tool that both the Soviet Union and the United States, brain fart, the Soviet Union and Communist China have used over time in their own countries to spread myths about the United States. They make the United States look hypocritical. During World War II, for instance, when we had the segregated army, which was terrible. The Soviet Union really harped on that to say that America writ large, America in its entirety, is a defective system. That this terrible example of racism and segregation means that the entire system of capitalism and democracy is defunct. Meanwhile, they were literally throwing people in gulags, killing by the millions. Let's look at a picture here of, this is picture 7. This is a picture of a Soviet propaganda. It's called The Lynched Negro. So this is how they portrayed the United States and the Soviet Union. Oh, they claim to be the Statue of Liberty country of great principle. And look how they lynch African Americans. And of course, again, I know that I'm repeating this point, but to an extent, they were right. Of course, it was gravely hypocritical and evil for us to have people in this country who lynched Black people. But I'm trying to show you a similarity here, that the propaganda in the past has been to take these or to make America in its entirety seem hypocritical and defunct. You get it. Let's go to picture 8. This is just another example. Wrest 8 innocent young Negroes out of the hands of American bourgeoisie. This is what that propaganda piece is called. So again, American bourgeoisie writ large is defunct. Picture 9, freedom to the prisoners of Scottsboro. This is Soviet propaganda. This is referring to the Scottsboro incident in 1931, where 9 Black teenagers, I think in Alabama, were accused of raping 2 white women, and it was this horrible example of racism, and there were lynch mobs. It was just awful. But you see, they seize on it to say that all of America is bad. And then let's look at these 2 examples of Chinese Communist Party propaganda from the 50s and 60s. This one is called Be Clear About the Nature of American Imperialism. So right there is a caricature image of JFK, who is seated like a Buddha. You know, JFK, they're trying to make it out to be, you know, JFK and the American president position themselves as these enlightened figures. And then you saw, if we can pull up the image again, these hands coming out. You see a noose, you see a knife, you see a money bag, you see a gun. You know, they act like they're so great, but America really is all of those violent, terrible things. And then the final picture is called Thus is America, another piece of old Chinese Communist Party propaganda. And so you see there, caricature of Uncle Sam sitting on a pile of money. Those horrible capitalist Americans, all they care about is money, crushing the proletariat. You see Black, white Americans being crushed. And then there's that specter of death over the shoulder. And it's just this general message. America is hypocritical, and the whole system is defunct. What do they say? The more things seem to change, stay the same.
The more things change, the more they stay the same.
Thank you.
I am just inspired to say that the idea of America, and it is an idea, it is not borders, it is not a flag, it is the people.
That's right.
Becomes harder and harder to defend every single day, from within, from without. The ideas that started in England and in the Bible and came across the ocean and manifested in the documents that we so cherish. At least I do. The freedoms that we have.
I do too.
That people have fought and died for. It is an idea, and that idea needs to never be extinguished. It is the greatest thing this world has ever seen. And the more powerful it is, the more hate you're going to see. It will never die in me.
That's right.
And I hope that other people feel the same way. Because outside of that idea is tyranny.
Yep.
And dictatorships and oppression and poverty.
We have to, yes. We can't use the examples. And of course, again, there have been slavery, Jim Crow, all of those things. We can't use those examples of when we have fallen down on our principles to negate all of the many times that we lived up to our principles. And right now that we continue to live up to them and have reversed those terrible things. We have to defend our country because it is good and because it is ours. And we live in a society now where nobody wants to defend this country. Come on. People who live in evil regimes defend their country. We live in the noblest country to ever exist on planet Earth, and we won't even fly a flag. That's shameful. Sorry to get so intense about it, but it's true, and we'll wrap it up.
The corruption and the greed exists in Washington, D.C. I feel like I'm watching a student union, like a bunch of children playing with our money and our laws, and it's disgusting the way they line their pockets. On both sides, corruption is everywhere, and so it becomes harder and harder. But at the end of the day, I will never stop loving the idea of this country. And there are plenty of people that will keep it alive. Mm-hmm. We have to overcome this.
That's right.
We must.
Well, as you said, I'll repeat it, the more powerful the idea, the more hate we're going to see. And so we hope to be a counter to that. Thank you all so much for joining me on this Chinese Communist Party propaganda episode. This show is truly the random topic show. But in everything I talk about or try to do, trying to defend this country and just elevate ourselves in our character, our patriotism, our knowledge, our fun, our enjoyment of life. That's really what the show is fundamentally about. Just elevating ourselves as Americans and as human beings. So I thank you for being with me. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Julie R. Hartman, and check out Dennis and Julie in addition to Timeless. I'll see you tomorrow at 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock Eastern for another live show. Take care.